I'm Brian Wool, as he said, Vice President of Brand Sales at Resonate. I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves and their company, and then we'll go into some questions. So I'll kick it off. Brian Wool, Resonate. For those of you not familiar with Resonate, we're a data and analytics company, and really focused on helping our brand customers really better understand what motivates consumers to buy certain products, create custom audiences around those segments, and then activate those in a digital format. So glad to be here. So RC.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rahul. I lead the marketing team for fast growth startup brand. Been in the CPG space for 15 plus years. Worked with Reckitt for nearly a decade, and then now taking a new gig.
Hi everyone, my name is Melissa Schwartz. I am the brand director on Coca-Cola for North America. Super excited to be here, and talk to you guys today.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Elyse. I'm the VP of Brand Marketing at Kickstarter. For those who don't know, Kickstarter is the premier crowdfunding platform for creative projects. I've been with the company for about 5 years. Excited to be here.
Hi there, Heather Malenshek, so I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Land O'Lakes. Who has Land O'Lakes butter in their fridge? Nice. Only about 20% of our business, so the rest of our business is in animal nutrition, in agricultural technology and insights, and also sustainability solutions. So we'll talk a bit about that today. Been with the company for about 2.5 years and was formerly the CMO for Harley Davidson.
Very interesting, from dairy to, motorcycles. So very, very interesting. So I had an opportunity to spend some time with everybody on the panel. And, the one thing that jumped out is, we have two companies that have been around for more than 100 years. And then two of the other companies, and I'll let you all guess which those are, that have been around for about 20 years or just under 20 years. So, very interesting dynamic. So the first question, and I'll ask each of you. I think it's really relevant. Not a Harley Davidson.
Just a truck.
What's the brand origin story, and how do you think about staying relevant to that brand? I'll let right down the line. Yeah.
Let's start with the Goliaths, and then the name will come in, right?
Okay, so we're one of the 100-plus-year-old brands. Land O'Lakes is 102 years old this year. We are actually a farmer-owned cooperative. So we're owned by about 1,500 dairy farmers, about 900 ag retailers, who are the retailers that support the farmers, and about 500 row crop farmers. We were born in 1921, so Minnesota dairy farmers that started the co-op, and then we grew from there. So we've been around a long time, and it's been interesting for me. And actually, in my career, I've been really fortunate to work with some amazing legacy brands, and I think it's actually a fun part of my job, which is to make them relevant today as much as they were, several years ago. So for us, it's really staying really rooted in who we are as a company, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about that, but really grounded in what started us as a company, and then making sure that cooperative spirit retains today, and staying really close to the consumer and the customer, and knowing how we can make that connection. So,
can you talk to us a little bit about the difference of working at a co-op owned organization comparatively to a Harley Davidson, and some of those differences, the audiences, and we talked about employees, and the different constituencies that you have at Land O'Lakes.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because there's actually more similarities between Land O'Lakes and Harley Davidson than you might think. What's really interesting about Land O'Lakes is, as a cooperative being owned by farmers, we are working on behalf of our farmers every day. So we are particularly keen to make sure we're investing their money appropriately, because all that money goes back to the farmers in their communities. So a really unique business model. Harley Davidson is a publicly traded company. I do not miss that. I don't miss the calls of Wall Street. But I think one of the similarities, to be honest with you, is the passion that was within the Harley Davidson Motor Company when I worked there, that community of people who work for the brand. I was talking about this with somebody last night. It's really in your soul. Like, I'm a motorcyclist, have been all of my life. And so when you work for the company, you really invest yourself emotionally as well as physically. And I think the same with Land O'Lakes. So we're very passionate about what we do. We're very passionate about supporting farming, agriculture, rural America. and advocating on their behalf. And our constituents, kind of different. So we have a lot of audiences at Land O'Lakes that we work with. We work with policymakers and thought leaders. We work with, obviously, butter buyers. We work with B2B in the dealer space, so we do B2B to C. So it sort of runs the gamut from there. And then, as I said, Washington, D.C. is a big focus for us in policy making. And then at Harley, the one other similarity I would say is our dealer network at Harley-Davidson is a network of small business owners. So many of them got into the business because they love motorcycles, not necessarily to make a profit. And we also worked on behalf of supporting them every day. So I feel the connection with them and the connection with our farmers is somewhat similar.
Thank you. Elyse, Kickstarter, very interesting company, very purpose-driven in what you do. Love to hear a little bit more about, the origin of the company and, how you think about brand authenticity.
Yeah, so Kickstarter was founded in 2009 with the mission to help bring creative projects to life. It's a very expansive mission, and it has not changed since day one. A lot of those kind of fundamentals about what motivates the company and all of the people who work at it have also never changed in terms of just believing in the power of creative work and its impact on society. The thing that has shifted over the last 15 years is the ecosystem, the creative ecosystem surrounding Kickstarter, and each one of the different communities that we support. So, Kickstarter has projects on it from every type of creative discipline, from tabletop games to design and technology to fine arts, comics. Each of those spaces has undergone its own kind of, metamorphosis over the last decade plus. And so one of the challenges, and I think one of the kind of brand strengths, is that there is so much kind of faith and passion in the mission itself that no matter what the changes are, there is a way to adapt. I think that one of the things that I think about when I think about brand authenticity is how to translate the brand to the different communities that we serve in an authentic way. So, for example, when you're speaking to somebody who's really passionate about games, it's a completely different voice and tone and method of engagement than speaking with somebody who is passionate about contemporary art. But there are some things that are in common and some mechanisms that are in common. So that's some of the things that we think about.
Yeah, so having so many categories on the platform, the gaming, the technology, do you employ different marketing strategies against each one of those categories, or do you find that the mission around that type of person, it's the same, or how do you think about that? All the different categories.
Yeah, so we think about kind of engaging each community in the way that that makes the most sense for them. A lot of what we do is really organic in nature. We don't do very much paid advertising for that reason. It all kind of starts around these very passionate communities, and so we think about how can we authentically be a part of each of those communities. We show up at tabletop game conferences. We are present at film festivals, where the community is showing up to express its passion. Kickstarter is also present in those places.
Would love to hear, brand strategy and, everything that's happening at the Coca-Cola company.
All the secrets.
It's the brand, we all know, and, it's very, very interesting, so.
Yeah, so, that's one of the most amazing things about Coca-Cola, and such a privilege, it's my privilege to carry the brand forward right now, but everyone has a story with Coca-Cola, and it's, we used to, every Tuesday was pizza night, or I went to my local McDonald's, or the first time I had a Coke was this, and it's amazing to hear those stories with so many people globally. Which means that the brand is rooted in its values, and that has stayed consistent over time. But the big thing now is, okay, so we have these values, we stand for uplift, we stand for optimism and connection, but how does that get translated as the consumer dynamic changes? So as new consumers come into the fold, as channels change, how are we making sure that we are re-expressing those values in not the way that it meant in the 50s, but in the way that connection means, today? How are we digitizing things? one of our main occasions is consumption with food. So that's something that I've thought a lot about. It's not necessarily just restaurants and grocery. We just heard from DoorDash. So how are we exploring different mechanisms to deliver the brand, the product, to our consumers in ways that feel true to our ethos, but also break through in our contemporary and meet consumers' needs today?
Thanks. Rahul, your company, Qunol, experienced significant growth over the last several years. How have you maintained the brand, your brand strategy, with that continued accelerated growth?
Yeah, it's tough. Not many of you might know it, but we are a leading heart health, joint health brand. We were founded 13 years back with the whole idea of bringing premium ingredients, science-backed ingredients to the consumer who needs it. And today, the US economy is aging. We have more and more people who need it, genuinely good products. And we were a challenger brand. We created a niche in a space dominated by really big brands, but we were always like the expert brand, the brand recommended by doctors, the brand recommended by cardiologists. When I came in, it was a challenge of how do you make it a little bit more mainstream, because it's not the 50 plus who need it. Even in today's world, you need 40 plus people who are believing that they want to live longer, but they also want to live healthier. They want to enjoy life. So the whole challenge for me was how do you make it mainstream while keeping the ethos of the brand? And it was a fantastic experience that I had in the last 1.5, 2 years, but we went out, well, just one example of it is we went out in the market saying, okay, who can be that voice who can take us across so many more doors? Who could embody the feeling of healthy aging? We started with, I was telling Brian about this, we started with like 200, you were not kidding, 200 people who stand for it from everybody you could think of, right? We finally landed with Tony Hawk, and so we actually signed up Tony Hawk. He's our brand ambassador from January of this year. But it goes just beyond he being a person that people resonate with. Number one, he is doing things at the age of 54 that I honestly, at the age of 40, would love to do. Right? And you see, if he can do it, I can do it. What's fueling him? But he also was a hardcore loyal user of the brand. So it's a fun fact, but he actually sent in a clip to us saying, I want to work with you because I've been on your brand for 5 years. Then there's a long story behind why and how we ended up there. But that's how you start to build the authenticity of the brand while still trying to manage a fast-growing brand, because you do want to grow. You don't want to be in a niche. You don't want to look at explore different areas around.
So Tony Hawk, who's your number two?
It was, I don't know whether I could be saying it, but yes, there was another NFL football player as well as a leading celebrity who actually is, probably would have been a very close number two. Okay. But I would have to tell you, when it came to decision, it was that person is a loyal consumer and he has authentically wanted to support the brand. That's what you go for.
Sure. Yeah. So we talked a little bit about brand authenticity. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about consumer engagement or the changing landscape of consumers. And so, how does each of your organizations think about the differing, the changing landscape, right, of your customer base? And how do you stay authentic to your brand, knowing that there's a lot of change that happens, whatever it might be politically or other things of that ilk. Heather?
Oh, okay. I was pointing at you. You can go first. So one of the things that when I joined Land O'Lakes 2.5 years ago, one of the things that really struck me was the diversity of the business, right? And I'm like, my God, people should know about this. And we had, I would say, 4 very separate silos in the company, the dairy foods, the sustainability, the agricultural piece, and animal nutrition. And the power was really when we came together as an enterprise. So we did some work to develop our purpose, and that has really helped us tremendously think about pretty much everything as we think about our consumer base, how we engage. There's a North Star for us now that we know why we're here, what our role is in the world, and all of our businesses kind of tap into that. And that's really been a bit of a game changer for us in getting the whole company to think about how we work together. And then consumer engagement, so as I said, we have B2C in our dairy foods division. We also work with B2B in food service. We have a vast number of different customers within there. We have dealers who sell our Purina brand and other things. So it's really on a business by business basis, looking at and staying on top of who those consumers are. One of the ways that we do is we develop customer journeys that we've been pretty diligent about doing that. In fact, some of my team are in the back who were involved in some of that work. There you goes. That's Mickey. But the customer journey work we've done is really not a linear customer journey, but more of a holistic view of the consumer, more mindset than behavioral focused. Not focused on functional moments, but focused on those, what we call marker moments, those highly charged emotional moments in the process, whether you're a farmer, whether you're a dealer selling animal nutrition, or whether you're in dairy. And that's really helped us get much closer to the customer and stay on top of that and be able to differentiate ourselves at the right time. So
I love hearing about that, just like the marker moments, the kind of moments that are emotionally charged, and I think that there's a connection in a way to the way that we think about relevance in the contemporary and changing landscape in the creative ecosystem, where there are all kinds of things that arise for creators that maybe nobody expected. And Kickstarter has, I think, an obligation and a history of kind of weighing in at those moments on the side of artists and creators. So I think when it comes to this, I'm just thinking about that kind of like emotional moment that somebody might be having when they feel that some aspect of their livelihood, think about people who are raising money for their creative work on the platform. If there's a global shipping crisis, that has fundamental kind of effect on their bottom line. And so when we think about how we support creators in bringing projects to life, we think about the fundraising that happens on our platform, but we also think about what do they have to do before they fundraise, what do they have to do after, and how can we help them through that whole journey, and really make sure that we're providing value to them that is really in line with the brand ethos, but at a more fundamental level, it's meeting their need.
Go ahead, yeah. Melissa?
Yeah. So one of our main priorities is making sure that Coke stays relevant to a new consumer, a younger generation, to ensure the sustainability of the brand. And as you look at that, Gen Z, so there are so many buzzy things, gaming and metaverse, and it's so easy for a brand just to go into that space, slap their brand in, and check the box that they're doing something new and innovative and youthful. But we didn't want to do that. We wanted to understand where our consumers are, but then enter the space in a way that was authentic to the brand. So one of the big passion points is around gaming, and what we learned was that Gen Z, Gen Alpha are really using the gaming environment as a method of connection, of making new friends, of connecting with others, which is something that is so in line with Coca-Cola. So we entered into that space and actually co-created with the gaming community an island in Fortnite, and launched a first ever Fortnite metaverse-born product called Coca-Cola Bite that was out for a limited time last year in the metaverse, and then brought that into reality and actually had that as our first ever D2C endeavor. So test and learn all of it, but was a really authentic way that we were able to take our brand equities and ethos and go into an area where consumers are now in a way that tied back and really built the brand in a unique way.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just add one small point to what everybody said, right? And in my experience, the inherent consumer need stays the same. The way they express it, the way they talk about it, their expectations from brand change. But if you can stick on and be true to the inherent consumer need, most of the time you get it right. Most of the time you get it right.
Are any of you using any new emerging channels to engage with customers, and how do you think about that engagement and then staying true to the brand?
Wow. Okay. So I keep being the first. I don't know what's going on.
I love it. Come on.
Come on, Rahul.
I have a very small point on this one, right? Because being a growth brand, again, you're very particular about every dollar you put in, right? So we are very choiceful in where we need to spend the brand, where we need to spend the dollar. I honestly believe that even existing channels are too much at this moment of time. If you can make 3, 4 really work, good for you. And this is my experience when I worked in the bigger CPG companies. I saw, you're talking about the whole breadth of media channels. When you come into startups which are really successful, they hack 1, 2, 3 things. And they got to make that working because that has to pay before you put the next one. But what's one last point that I'll put in here, which is very, very interesting when I look at the topic out here, red hot, right? But honestly, in today's all panels, I have found more discussions about authentic than about channels. More about how do brands connect and at a peer level versus like what's a new thing. And I actually think it's a good step after the whole COVID thing that we are all pausing to say, okay, where do we want to go? And I think that's the only message that I have.
Have you found that you talk about using 3 or 4 channels?
Yep.
Is there a channel that you have tried that that wasn't effective for you?
So it blows many people out. Our most productive channel is, and it's very, very archaic, our demo program in Costco, where we literally have someone standing there and doing it, and people just don't believe how do we do it at scale. But we are there 52 weeks across most of Costco, and I keep saying is give me 5 minutes with a person in that age group and we'll make them buy. But you have to connect, and because we're trying to sell something much more serious, we're trying to sell something which is based on science, you need that attention, but once you get that, it works. So that's been like for me where like I don't want to chase the next big thing. I want to make something where I know it can deliver on what we need to speak with the consumer.
About some of the other ideas?
Yeah. So the majority of Coke is actually consumed with food, so that's something that I spend a ton of time thinking about is our association with food. We have a leadership position. We are perceived as the most delicious soda beverage with food, which I would wholeheartedly agree with, and I hope you
agree
would too. Yeah. Nothing like Coke and a slice of pizza. We heard all about pizza yesterday. None of them serve Coke, so we'll put it over there. But historically, the occasion had been handled in a little bit of an antiquated way. It was traditional families around a table in a grocery store with a 2-liter bottle of Coke, and that's just not the reality anymore. So I spend a ton of time thinking about how do we utilize new channels to bring our association with food to life. So we spend a lot of time with DoorDash, doing some interesting programs there, whether it's replicating the QSR environment through DoorDash because we know that consumers are ordering at home more. That was something that started with COVID and has continued and is not going to go anywhere. Or even just how food is so much a part of culture, whether that's content creation, influencers, reality TV shows. I think it's the #1 unscripted show topic nowadays. So thinking a lot about how we integrate Coke and food into those types of occasions outside of what we have historically done.
Yeah, I agree with you, Rahul, that it's less about like the new hot channel for us than it is about doing the things that we do as well as we possibly can, and really connecting in the channels that we are using. So I think I love just hearing that the kind of on-site activation was one of your most effective things. I think that we find that our presence at events and conferences also has a similar feeling where the connection is instantaneous and it's much deeper than anything that we might do on social, for example. But yeah, I think that right now what we're focused on is thinking about how to leverage the people in our community who are like as passionate as we are about Kickstarter and its mission, and kind of tapping into that and empowering them to be as outspoken as we are, to help other creators, to lift up other creators who might not think of Kickstarter as a tool for them. So yeah, it's less about the hot new thing than it is about even digging back into email journeys. Like, how can we really make sure that we're getting the right information to the right person at the right moment so that they can maximize their success on Kickstarter?
Yeah, I think you covered it too in terms of not chasing channels or chasing the hot shiny object, or the shiny object. So we did something I think was pretty innovative fairly recently. Last October, we did a campaign around Farmers Are Incredible, really trying to bring the story of what farmers do and how critical they are to our food supply system. 1% of the population in the US feeds 100%, so we wanted to try and convey that. we ended up doing a great partnership with Big Ten Network, so that's not the new thing. But what we did add to that, we had an activation at the Purdue-Nebraska game last October, which was a really fun game. We used NIL for the first time, so I think it was legal in 21. So we reached out and got a group of alumni and people within the football networks, like Garrett Nelson and Jordy Nelson was in there too. I only remember the Nelsons. But these are people who have had a background or an upbringing in agriculture. So we hooked up with them. We call them micro-influencers. They didn't have massive followings, but they were right in the sweet spot of what we wanted to do. And they actually gained us a ton of coverage. We did trading cards with them. We created an all-ag team and everything like that. So we got a lot of people really engaged. And then the other piece was the marching band, which we didn't expect to be such a huge success. But my God, I come from the UK and we don't have such a thing, and they have so much fun. And the Purdue marching band spelled out "Farmers are incredible" on the field and some other visuals that they learned in like 2 days. I don't know how. And they tape all of their performances on YouTube. It was I think it was their biggest video on YouTube in their history. So that got out there too. So just some interesting, unique things to kind of get exposure in a new way.
Very interesting across the board. I don't know how much time we have, but any questions from the audience? Open it up. If everybody's okay with that, here we go. Can you tell us who you are?
Yes.
Yeah. Let me read that question back so the whole audience heard that. The question was, how do you think about going about building teams at your respective companies?
So I'll go back to the purpose thing that we did, because we have that North Star. We spent most of the time last year getting it into the bricks of the company, because one of the things we wanted to make sure, we wanted people to feel really good about working for Land O'Lakes. We felt they did, but we really wanted to know why they were doing it, get connected to our farmers. So that really helped. We developed a whole new sort of employer brand and got out there, but not just for new candidates coming in. We wanted to re-recruit people that were in the company, and particularly to address, people across the different enterprises and the opportunities there. So spent a lot of time doing that, and that's actually been pretty inspirational, because we've had our college team are out recruiting, using that purpose and talking to people, and our kind of statement is, if you want to change the world, work in agriculture. Because it's amazing, right? So that's been really a big part of the inspiration for us, and we've got a very passionate group of employees who are out there advocating for it every day. So thanks for the question.
Yeah. Doing that research, did you find any interesting insights about the employees specifically?
Yeah, actually we did. So talk about customer journeys. We did one for the employees too, right? So what was super interesting is, our belief is that your recruitment really starts from the day you start talking to somebody, and it doesn't stop when they join the company. And so we did a journey that showed us, there's the excitement of the first month, right? You're all new and getting excited, meeting people and learning things, and then you go through a 4-month slump, when you're I kind of know people now, and not as exciting as it used to be. Yeah, exactly. So we need to come back in at that 4-month period and remind people of why they joined the company. So it's kind of re-recruiting all the time on a constant basis. But it was fascinating to hear from the employees, and it's been really good. So our engagement levels went through the roof. People feeling connected to the brand and the company went through the roof. And I think our conversion on our career site now from the lead to application is about 85%, which is pretty good, right? So.
I think that what you're talking about with just a connection to the mission, it's not something to take for granted. Even though everybody joins the company, everyone joins as a believer, you have to invest in maintaining that. I think that that's so true. And to your point, keeping it also fresh and moving with the pace of culture, right? So one of the things that we really encourage is for every Kickstarter employee to be backing projects on the platform, to be supporting them all the time. Some of our biggest super backers, we call them, are Kickstarter employees. And they also, many run their own campaigns on the platform too, so there's a really deep connection to the creator experience and journey, because a lot of people are creators themselves, and some have actually fundraised on the platform. But then I think in terms of keeping it fresh and alive, it's a smaller size team, and so I think it's important to also have outside voices contributing as well. So we have just wrapped up a series of video interviews with creators for Black History Month. We're in the midst of one for Women's History Month right now, and so we've been thinking about how do we make sure that what we're doing there in terms of kind of bringing this inspiration is something that's happening within our team as well as for our external audience. That feels important to us too. Yeah. Oh. Sorry.
For us, I mean, it's really important that our team stay engaged, and I would much rather somebody come to me with this audacious idea and us try to figure it out than just stay with status quo. So we all spend a ton of time. I mean, it's a 135-year-old brand, so we have extensive archives, which are the most amazing things ever. Every ad, every product across all of the Coca-Cola company, where we can go and spend time and learn from the past, as well as the world of Coke in Atlanta. Shameless plug, it's really fun if anybody's ever in Atlanta. So we spend a lot of time there with the historians there, but then also a lot of time with consumers at events like this to make sure that we're learning externally and making sure that we are learning about the world around us. And then it really comes down to the brief. So when we author briefs to then go and do brand work, it's okay, what are those equities that need to come through in all of the new and cool and different stuff that we learned and got inspired by, to make sure that they have the leeway to be inspired to do new things, but that it is grounded in strategy and the brand equities. Yeah. Good.
I'll just add one. I think everyone said, I agree with 100% with them. Just very tactical point is, I have seen if you can structure your team, one which anchors the brand and one which is trying to disrupt the brand, it works best, right? So even though I say we are a brand which stands for 45 plus and we want to do it, how could somebody else come and disrupt it? Those are the people who are creating very young digital content for me, right? And there's always this healthy tussle. I think that's worked well because finally, if it's a good idea from either way, it will either push the brand, stretch the brand, or at the other way, it will get said, it doesn't really flow with the brand.
Any other questions? Nope.
Hold on a second. Let's get you a microphone. I hope it'll reach. You're good.
Yeah, it reaches. Anna Canoia from Rock the Bells, head of partner relations. So I have a question when it comes to consumer-facing content. When you are working with a brand that has multiple verticals, how do you decide what the consumer is actually engaging with, and so you're not clouding them or bombarding them with so much information to the point where they pivot away from the brand because it's too much at one time?
Do you want to start in the middle?
I mean that is definitely a concern, and something that we try to keep on top of in terms of the simplification of our message. Sometimes it can get really hard because you have on a brand like Coke, you have a lot of different stakeholders with a lot of different opinions, but we try to keep it simple. There's probably opportunity there, but probably have more sophisticated.
I don't know. I think for us, we try and think about, we're speaking to so many different audiences. I thought it was fascinating to hear about Land O'Lakes, many different audiences as well. I think that when we think about that, it's there are very few messages that we put out to a blanket, everyone who might be engaged with us. It's oftentimes we're thinking about a specific type of creator when we're putting out a message, and so there's an aspect of kind of personalization and targeting that I think can help make sure that you're getting something relevant in front of somebody, because hopefully you're understanding kind of where that person's coming from, what their needs are, and the content is intended to deliver that need or address it directly. So that's when we think about that, I think that's it. It's sort of targeting for the right point, the right moment in the journey.
I don't know if I have a whole lot to add to that too. It's kind of the conundrum that we all deal with, I think. But it is about, we we don't have massive budgets to waste either, and we don't blanket people. We tend to get very, very focused on our audience. So dairy foods, for example, we have a group called the Cooperative Believers, who are people that really, buy into the cooperative idea, and we talk to them. But also, we are tracking everything pretty diligently, so we know whether people are actually engaging. If they're not, then we move on. And then we have a great agency that does a lot of our work for us that gives us really great creative that really taps into that particular audience itself.
Do we have time for one more? Or we?
Yeah, I actually have a couple questions of my own.
Okay.
We got a little bit of time, so if you do have a question, don't be shy. But do you have?
We have one here.
All right. Let me try to do this in a way that doesn't hurt anybody and unplug anything. I think we got it.
Do we have it? Okay. Hi, I'm Megan. I'm from Suzy. You guys talked a little bit about like changing consumers, just the pace at which everything is changing. I'm curious how you discern like where to double down when there's just so much information out there about Gen Z, young audiences. Would love to just hear a little bit more about that.
So I think the Gen Z thing is interesting to me because you're right. There's so much out there. They're this, they're that, they're this, they're that. So we engage with our customers and find out a little bit more. And Gen Z for me is interesting because like a lot of our workforce are Gen Z now, so we have people within the company we can talk to. I think you have to, again, think about where your brand really will resonate, and you have to cut out some of the other noise that's going on because there's so much, and there's a lot of opinions that are just that. They're just opinions, they're not necessarily facts. So it's hard to wade through it, to be honest with you. But again, we focus on customer journey where the brand can show up, where we have a right to win, and then go from there, and then use that as one point of input, but it's not the whole thing, I would say.
Yeah, one of the things that we think about is, in kind of trying to focus in on what's most important, serving the core user needs, the core audience that's already using the platform, making sure that we're really showing up for them and delivering what they need. Because when we think about kind of growth and what it takes to kind of engage new audiences, if you're not serving the one that you've already got exactly what they need, you're not going to be able to draw in anybody new either. So we think about kind of retention as sort of the engine of growth. And kind of really trying to stay true to what are our creators and backers asking us for, and how can we deliver as soon as possible against those needs before we start thinking about like what are all of the other possibilities, who are the other new markets we could engage.
Yeah, I think for us it's just making hard choices and trying to prioritize. To your point, there are so many options. There's so many amazing partners that we could choose to work with. But if we spread our money out and our efforts out, then we're not going to be impactful doing anything. So it's really thinking about who is where and where do we have a right to win, exactly what they were saying, and then doubling down on certain verticals where we can invest enough time and resources to make a difference.
Yeah, just to summarize, like how I see in some way, right? What everybody said is hypothesis-based testing. Always you got to keep testing that. Have a measurement piece which you can tell you, but honestly, when it works, you know it works. You will see it. Impact is it's very difficult for impact not to be seen, and you just need to double down there. It's the first two pieces which are very difficult.
Any other questions?
Thanks. Ross Lippy from Major League Soccer. Heather, I love the idea of a North Star that you alluded to at the beginning. Would just be curious to hear what that North Star is specifically with Land O'Lakes, and then maybe if we have time, would love to hear everybody's kind of respective company's North Star.
Yeah, I teased it enough, didn't I? So our North Star at Land O'Lakes is putting farmers at the heart of creating a better world for all of us, which is a pretty lofty purpose, right? And so we have 3 areas of impact for us. One is sustainable futures, so working within there. And we think about sustainability kind of broadly, not just land, but also people and animals and communities. Vibrant rural communities, because it's the communities in which our farmers live, and many of them actually are sort of at the heart of that community. And then the last one is a safe and plentiful food supply. So those are the 3 areas that we think we can talk about, and using that as kind of our North Star and purpose. And our role really at Land O'Lakes is to champion the role of the farmer in all of those things. But to help.
Yeah, so I think in the very beginning I mentioned that Kickstarter's mission has never changed since day one. It's always been to help bring creative projects to life, but the lens on that mission and the way in which we're pursuing it has changed over time. Right now we are thinking about how do we support creators not just during the fundraising moment, but also before and after. So how do we help them build an audience? How do we help them succeed on the platform? And then afterward, how do we help them fulfill? So, thinking about the entire journey and not just the kind of the portion of it that we're primarily responsible for, but thinking about the creator kind of more holistically.
For Coca-Cola, our mission is to refresh the world and make a difference. So from the refreshment side, it is providing experiences that refresh and delight consumers globally. And then on the making a difference side, we have a variety of different philanthropic efforts in sustainability and diversity and inclusion. So really, it's both sides.
For a brand which is 10 years old, I won't say North Star, but I'll say we have a star that we are aligning ourselves to. And it's essentially being a brand of choice when somebody thinks about healthy aging.
Santi, did you have a question? Yes. Okay. I'll leave you with one high-level question, then we'll transition if nobody else is. But if there is one, what is like the single biggest challenge on your minds, either for your particular marketing organization or that you feel the industry is trying to tackle collectively, where if somebody came in and said, hey, we've got an answer for this, it would be like the biggest, this make the single biggest impact. Is there anything that jumps out at you? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I'm curious if there's anything that
I
really
guess the point is not one.
Yes, well, sure, there's not one, but we only have time for one, let's say.
So for us, the biggest challenge we have is misinformation.
Oh.
So as we think about our industry, right? Whether you're talking about the dairy industry, whether you're talking about the agricultural industry, a lot of misinformation out there, particularly as it relates to sustainability, when actually many farmers have sustainable farming practices that they've been doing for years. And so I think there's misinformation about that, misinformation about rural America, which is something that we are really focused on bringing to life and stopping stereotyping around rural America and bringing that sort of vibrancy back. So I think that would be misinformation would be one word for one challenge.
I love it.
Yeah, it's such a big question. It's hard to have one answer. I agree, but I think that there's two things that I would say actually. One is just the kind of split attention that everybody has. Just I think this has been a problem for maybe more than a decade and nobody's cracked it open, but how do you figure out actually how to give people the content that they most want at the moment when they want it, and nothing else, and not kind of like pollute the experience with a lot of other stuff. So I think that's one. And I also think there's an aspect of how do we not only kind of engage customers, engage users, creators, and backers, but also ensure that they are as successful as they can be. So I think different kinds of creators need different types of resources. There's a different kind of ecosystem within film than there is in dance and publishing. And so I think figuring out how can we provide the right resources for people who are going through dramatically different journeys, and to do that at scale, I think is a really fundamental challenge.
Yeah, I would actually say a lot of the same things, which is crazy, just the difference in the companies. But you think about Coca-Cola, it's such a massive brand, but the reality is like people are segmented. They have a lot, especially as we think about the younger consumers and as we think about Gen Z and Gen Alpha, it's all different tribes. So I think figuring out how to get the right message in a way that's resonant at the right time to the right people would be, game changer.
I'll probably say like the biggest challenge is one line of measurement which can balance brand authenticity with the new world of performance marketing. Right? We, as marketeers, we love being that marketer who can create that brand which is relevant and authentic, but at the same time you got to deliver, and you got to make it perform. Every dollar has to perform, and that balance and having tools or like some kind of measurement piece is probably going to be really helpful.
It's that short-term, long-term,
Yeah.
right? You got to deliver the quarterly numbers, but you got to maintain the long-term brand relationship with your
Before you
consumers.
jump into Meta,
Yeah.
you got to do that.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much. This has been amazing. We really appreciate having you be with us today. Fantastic. So let's